What's going on, everybody? C4 here. Welcome back to the channel. I said this video was coming. It's coming a little bit later because I actually was working on a collab video that I think you guys are going to like. And then, unfortunately, 3 hours in, as we finished up, I had to look back at the playback of the video. All laggy. Frames were getting skipped. It's down the drain. So I'm in a terrific mood to make this video that I promised on Twitter I would make. I said if Philadelphia didn't sign a corner by literally this time, I said this last night, this time today, I was going to make like an EDP style rage. And I wasn't really that mad, but until I just wasted 3 hours on a collab that didn't work. Very much in the mindset to talk to you about this. And it's kind of a rant on the Philadelphia Eagles. And it's my thoughts and feelings about how we approach the Jalen Ramsey trade and, you know, seeing what Marcus Peters went for. Just seeing the fact that two really good corners that would present huge upgrades to our squad. A team that is Super Bowl on the cusp of being a Super Bowl caliber team, especially when we get Deshaun Jackson back on the offensive side of things. But clearly, we have an obnoxiously obvious weakness, and that is our cornerback play right now. Like, you know, Malcolm Jenkins is calling them out, and I don't see it getting any better. So we need to just break into everything about the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, the GM, drafting, everything we're going to talk about here today in a articulated, formulated rant. So when you look at the Philadelphia Eagles secondary, it's been documented, bunch of videos about, you know, how we won the Super Bowl, about how the roster is built. Generally, the two positions Philadelphia goes very, very cheap at is linebacker and corner, more so at cornerback. You look at the corners we have on the roster right now. Crayvon LeBlanc under $1 million. Avonte Maddox under $1 million. Rasul Douglas under $1 million. Sidney Jones, second round pick, $1.6 million. Jalen Mills is on $2 million. And Darby's on an ugly right now, especially considering how he's playing. 1 year, $8.5 million. So combined, that's 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 4. Like, our whole corner room is like the equivalent of like an elite corner. Like, I guarantee Philly has the least amount of resources allocated to their cornerbacks in the NFL. You get what you pay for, huh? So budget corners only really work for the Philadelphia Eagles. It did work our Super Bowl year because our defensive line was getting home. And then combined with the fact that our offense was starting out very, very quick, we were up in almost every game at halftime. You know, we're sitting there looking like, you know, it's predictable. We made other teams predictable, which made it that much more easier on the defense. It's, you know, another video talking about Mike Groh and everything that's the disappointments that's going on there. But these, you know, look at the sack numbers right now. Brandon Graham has 4 sacks. He got 3 against the Jets. Derek Barnett, 2 sacks. Underwhelming. Orlando Scandrick, who we got off the street 2 weeks ago, got 2 sacks against the Jets. That is more sacks than Fletcher Cox has this season. Josh Sweat, Vinny Curry, Deshaun Hall, Timmy Jernigan, all these guys have 1 sack. This defensive line is very overrated. They're underperforming, and it's magnifying our weakness in the secondary. Now, you could argue that this defensive line, they're getting older. We're an old team that they could use the help of a secondary every once in a while to actually do their job so they have more than like 2-3 seconds to get home and try to affect the pass, which they're just not getting right now. So it's you know, it's a cause and effect. What is really the big issue here? But the issue, obviously, is how this defense is built. We have allocated tremendous resources to the defense to do their job, and they're not doing it. So you then need to either be stubborn and stick with your ways and go, oh, well, we'll see what happens. Let's just keep doing what we're doing, and maybe something will change, which is highly unlikely. Or you say, maybe we don't give Malik Jackson a $10 million contract that costs $10 million. Maybe we understand the value. Pull a Bill Belichick and New England Patriots and understand maybe Brandon Graham isn't worth, you know, whatever that big contract extension he just got. And maybe we break off some of that heavy investment in the defensive line. You know, invest that in a good corner, a lockdown corner, which there are few and far between. And you'd have to be ridiculous to think you could trade for a franchise corner. Until you saw the deals that I mean, Marcus Peters is not a franchise corner. Marcus Peters is a good corner. He's a ball hawk. He has his strengths and weaknesses. But Jalen Ramsey is the most talented cornerback in the NFL. Point blank, period. He has a career trajectory of a elite corner, and then he can pull a Malcolm Jenkins, and when he gets a little bit slower, you move him to safety, you probably have the best safety in the NFL when he makes that transition. He's a complete defensive back. They do not become available whatsoever. This was Philly's opportunity, man. And I don't want to just dwell on the fact that we missed this. I mean, you heard, if you watched the press conference today for the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson, they asked him about it. They said, was it disappointing you couldn't get Jalen Ramsey? And rather than say, next question, Doug Peterson's like, well, it's not really disappointing. We can only talk about the players here, which therefore meant we were in on him. There was a report we offered a first and a second. He ended up going for 2 firsts and a 4th to the LA Rams. I mean, is that a good move for the Rams? It's a good move for Jalen Ramsey. Is that a good move for the Rams? Who am I going to argue? Like, their top-heavy roster, man. It's going to be tough for the Rams. I don't think it was a great move for the Rams, but they did something. They said, we are 3rd place in our division. We're not playing good. I don't think Jalen Ramsey solves any of the Rams' issues, really, but that secondary's banged up. This is their Super Bowl window. You go all in, right? And you figure those Rams 2 first-round picks, ideally, like, they probably traded them thinking that they're going to be bottom-tier first-round picks. No way you can get a player of Jalen Ramsey's caliber wherever those first-round picks may lie for the Rams, which is the same exact scenario for the Philadelphia Eagles. Philly is never going to be in the position to draft. There's 2 cornerback prospects right now that might be able to hold a candle to Jalen Ramsey. Jeffrey Okudah from Ohio State and Patrick Surtain in 2 years' time from Alabama. And those are even maybes because it's so tough to project corners at the next level. So those guys, they're top 10 picks at worst. Philly's not going to pick top 10. Quite, with this roster we have right now, even if we suck, even if we underperform, we're still a 8-8 team. We're going to be picking in the teens. So we pretty much determined why our cornerback play is not working because they're budget corners. They're designed to be budget corners, and our D-line's not doing their job. So, the question then becomes, so you don't trade for Jalen Ramsey because we got to draft one, right? Well, here's a list of corners drafted by Howie Roseman since he's been here with the Philadelphia Eagles. Trevard Lindley, Curtis Marsh, Brandon Boykin, Jordan Poyer, who's the best of the bunch. He's now a safety. Jalen Watkins, Eric Rowe, Ja'Cory Shepard, Randall Evans, Blake Countess, Jalen Mills, Sidney Jones, Rasul Douglas, Avonte Maddox. Yeah, that is a murderer's row of not good corners. So you have Jordan Poyer, who's a good safety, but not a corner. Jalen Mills, who I think could be a good safety, stuck at corner. Sidney Jones looks like a bust. Rasul Douglas has his limitations. I think he's a depth corner at best. If you're trying to find his best position, he'd probably be the best, like a really good first corner off the bench. But he's a spot starter. And Avonte Maddox might actually be better as a safety than he is a corner, but he's a slot corner. So, I don't want to dog Rasul Douglas and Avonte Maddox. I think there is some talent there, but there's no Jalen Ramsey there. There's no diamond in the rough. There's no great value. Those are terrible selections for cornerbacks. Howie Roseman, whatever scouting team assembles, cannot evaluate corners. And you can't say, what are we going to get a corner in free agency then if we can't draft him? Oh, that's a great meme. Namdi Asomugha, Byron Maxwell. We've had one good corner free agency signing. That was Asante Samuel, and that was almost a gimme. There was no way he was going to be bad. So more often than not, Philly memes when you have to sign a corner in free agency. There's no real good way to acquire than a trade. So you look at Jalen Ramsey. We understand we can't draft corners, right? So you look at Jalen Ramsey, 2 firsts and a 4th. His new deal's probably going to break the market. Right now, the top corner is getting paid, I think it's $14 million a year. So Jalen Ramsey, 15, 16, probably between 16 and 17 is what his yearly contract. Philly can make that work. It'd be tight, but we'd have to make some corners here, maybe long-term, not next season, but that would work. Howie Roseman is a wizard when it comes to the cap. I don't think Jalen Ramsey's contract would have been an issue for the Philadelphia Eagles. The fact that it would go against the grain of what is Howie Roseman too cocky about what formula we used to build this roster to win the Super Bowl that he's afraid to change it? Because right now our combined total for all of our corners is like $23 million. So Jalen Ramsey essentially would cost almost all of what we are allocating to the corners right now. That would completely go against the grain of Howie Roseman building this Super Bowl roster. But doesn't look like a Super Bowl team right now. Didn't really look like a Super Bowl team last year, even though we had a little bit of Nick Foles magic and we struggle with injuries. But injuries, that's something that we will also talk about. So it costs 2 firsts to get Jalen Ramsey, right? Well, let's take a look at Philly in their first-round pick history. So we need a stud corner, and 9 times out of 10, they will never even sniff whatever range the Philadelphia Eagles are picking at. You know what I'm saying? Philly usually picks between 14 and we'll go to 32 the year he won the Super Bowl. There's no real cornerback prospect in college right now that's better than a 24-year-old Jalen Ramsey. And I would even argue, right now, Jalen Ramsey for the rest of his career versus any corner in college. We'll just say that's at least a senior, junior, redshirt, sophomore. That I don't even think will even touch the career trajectory of Jalen Ramsey from now until whenever his new contract with the Rams is over. Like I said, you got Okudah from Ohio State, Surtain Jr. from Alabama. Philly's not going to sniff them. Okudah's probably top 10. Surtain could even go as high as top 5. And you look at Philadelphia Eagles draft history, right? With these first-round picks. I actually broke it down. Philly only is good at drafting when there's an obvious talent. Within the first 12 picks, You know, there's almost a defined dozen of these are your blue chip prospects. These are the guys that are going to be phenomenal. That's what Philly hits on. So we got Brandon Graham during the Howie Roseman era. We got Brandon Graham at 13. He's a tweener because Brandon Graham was a bust until he wasn't. So generally speaking, we're going to break even on BG, I think, for you know, giving full value there. Danny Watkins at 23, bust. Fletcher Cox at 12. He fits within that dozen. Lane Johnson at 4. Okay, we're getting those top 12 picks. We can hit on guys that are obviously really good talent. We got Marcus Smith at 26. Not a good pick. Nelson Aguilar at 20. Not a good pick. Carson Wentz at 2. Great pick. Derek Barnett at 14. Outside of that top 12, question marks right now about him. I think he still turns around. I think he's a solid player, but right now he's not a home run. There's other defensive ends that are around his age that have been drafted around him that are producing way better than Derek Barnett. Andre Dillard at 22. Still way too early, but he's been shaky. He's been shaking his. I'm not going to really, you know, say he's a bust or not because literally he's played one game. He gets to start this week against Dallas. But, I mean, he didn't come in and stonewall. And when he played last week against the Minnesota Vikings, it was a tough assignment against Everson Griffin, by all means. But if I just look at whatever scope I've seen from Andre Dillard, didn't look amazing against Everson Griffin. The same Everson Griffin, that big V in the NFC Championship game, stonewalled and body bagged. So, very limited scope. But generally speaking, unless Philly's picking within the top 12 picks, our first-round selections have been terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I don't think with this roster, we're going to be picking anywhere near the top 10, the top 12. So these first-round picks that would have cost to get Jalen Ramsey, it's trading an area of the draft that we really don't expect, especially if you get someone like Jalen Ramsey that's going to be any good. Because if not, we have a proven track record for Howie Roseman that where Philly is going to be expected to be picking over the next 2 years, we do not have a good hit rate on those type of players. So trade those unknowns for sure in Jalen Ramsey. So I guess, you know, I can't explain anymore. The argument against trading the 2 first is that Philly's an old roster. That's why I think we're struggling with injuries every single year. We're an old roster. These guys have a lot of miles on them. And you need that draft capital to get younger, right? And I agree. We have a lot of picks, not just first-round picks, but we have, you know, good day 2 picks, good day 3 picks. And I think mid-round is where we have our value. It's where Howie Roseman has been able to hit more often than not. We've hit more on our mid-round players than we have on our early round players. I would argue between 2 and 4 are the most valuable picks for Howie Roseman. Look at this. In his era, we got Jason Kelsey in the 6th, Dion Lewis in the 5th, Nick Foles in the 3rd, Ertz in the 2nd, Jordan Hicks in the 3rd, Jalen Mills, I mean, as much as he's polarizing, still good value in the 7th, Avonte Maddox in the 4th, Josh Sweat in the 4th, Dallas Goedert in the 2nd. Like, that is the money round. So we would have been giving up, like, I almost would argue that 4th round pick that would have been included in the Jalen Ramsey would be almost a bigger loss than what those first round picks, given the track record. Obviously not, but, you know, you can tongue in cheek it, given the fact of where Howie Roseman tends to find his value. So I think just from how and where those 2 first round picks for Jalen Ramsey would be, you could argue take the for sure thing in Jalen Ramsey. Now, for me, if I found out Philadelphia made this trade and there was no long-term extension in place, I think I would feel a little bit different because that is a massive gamble and you're giving a player like Jalen Ramsey who is definitely, at least gives the appearance of a me first type player, team second, get me paid, which, I mean, I'm not going to fault him for that. That's, you know, he might not be the best player that you want to give that kind of leverage to, but given the fact where the Eagles are at, I can't complain. I think if it comes down to would you give 2 firsts and a 4th for Jalen Ramsey for the Eagles, 100%. 100%. So how do we end this? What now, man? With the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, there's people that always argue he's not a scheme fit. I think that's bullshit because you see Rasul Douglas play a lot of man. He played man against Julio Jones when he played the Falcons. He played man on a couple plays when he got burnt by Stephon Diggs. That you'd be able to scheme Jalen Ramsey into this scheme. I think that's not a fair criticism. Who else is out there? I mean, you got Chris Harris Jr., but Denver Bronco fans say that their secondary is so depleted, wouldn't make sense for them to move him. You have Patrick Peterson, who, I mean, he was on the trade block, I guess, last season. Philly was rumored to be calling there, kicking the tires. That didn't come through. Maybe. I feel like Pat Pete's more likely than Chris Harris. Or is Philly just going to gamble that getting Jalen Mills back, Crayvon LeBlanc back, that's going to be enough? I feel like right now, given what's coming for Philly, I feel like they are confident that Jalen Mills and Crayvon LeBlanc are going to solve all of their secondary issues, which is frustrating. I mean, we might be getting Timmy Jernigan back, which could help that defensive line get pressure. But, I mean, even if you get Chris Harris, even if you get Patrick Peterson, it's not even comparable to Jalen Ramsey because the Eagles roster, I just said, Philadelphia is old. They need draft capital to get younger. Chris Harris is old. Doesn't fit that mold of getting younger. Patrick Peterson is old. Doesn't fit that mold of getting younger. While they're very, very shiny golden Band-Aids that'd be able to, kind of hold this secondary together and get some production, a guy like Jalen Ramsey's in his prime. The biggest thing with the Philadelphia Eagles that's magnified by our poor drafting is look at all the other teams around the league. They have young, like the good teams. They have young, talented playmakers. Look, we'll just focus on the NFC because that's where Philadelphia has to go through to win the Super Bowl. Look at the top teams in the NFC. New Orleans Saints. You got Alvin Kamara. You got Michael Thomas. You got Marshawn Lattimore. Those are three massive talents in their prime, under 25 or around that 25-year-old age. There's probably even more that I'm missing. You look at the Rams. Gurley, Goff for what it's worth. I mean, you assume he's going to be a little bit more consistent. Aaron Donald. Now you got Jalen Ramsey. There's 4 premier talents. John Johnson, even the safety, he's really, really good. Cooks, really good. Cooper Kupp, really good. You look at the 49ers. You got everyone on that defense. Buckner's an animal. Nick Bosa. You got the running back, the running combination. Like all these teams have these young players that are making up the core of their team. But you look at the Philadelphia Eagles. It's Carson Wentz. I mean, you got Fletcher Cox at 28. He's on that cusp. We have Wentz. That is it. That is our young, hopeful, big-time star. Jalen Ramsey would at least brought that up to 2. It's kind of even the bad teams, man, have good young talent. The Giants have better young talent than the Philadelphia Eagles. Evan Ingram. You got Saquon Barkley is unreal. Dexter Lawrence looks like an absolute stud. So I mean, do we solve the issue by I don't even know what it costs to get Chris Harris or Patrick Peterson. I wouldn't feel comfortable given their age, giving up a first-round pick. Could we get him for a second? Could we get him for a second and a player, a third, second? Honestly, I don't know, fellas. But ultimately, we need. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say we needed Jalen Ramsey because at the end of the day, the whole fact that new deal's up in the air would make me feel a little uncomfortable. But I would feel a lot better right now than I do right now if we did have Jalen Ramsey. If we were able to outbid the Rams and bring him in, it's not. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below, and we'll see you guys back here tomorrow. Peace out.